Born some 500 years before the birth of Jesus, the Buddha would grow to manhood in a town vanished long ago. For nearly 3 decades, he would see nothing of the world beyond. The tales say he was the son of a king, raised in a palace with every imaginable luxury. He was called Siddhartha Gautama, a prince among a clan of warriors. When I was a child, he said, I was delicately brought up, most delicately. A white sunshade was held over me day and night to protect me from cold, heat, dust, dirt, and dew. My father gave me 3 lotus ponds. One where red lotuses bloomed. One where white lotuses bloomed. One where blue lotuses bloomed.
The father wants him to be a king, wants him to conquer the world, to be the emperor of India, which at that time was 16 different kingdoms. And it was predicted that he would be able to conquer wherever he wanted if he remained as a king. So the father was creating this artificial environment to coddle him.
His father wanted to prevent him from ever noticing that anything might be wrong with the world, because he hoped that he would stay in the life they knew and loved and not go off as was predicted at his birth and possibly become a spiritual teacher rather than a king.
Shielded from pain and suffering, Siddhartha indulged in a life of pure pleasure. Every whim satisfied, every desire fulfilled. I wore the most costly garments, ate the finest foods. I was surrounded by beautiful women. During the rainy season, I stayed in my palace, where I was entertained by musicians and dancing girls. I never even thought of leaving. When he was 16, his father, drawing him tighter into palace life, married him to his cousin. It wasn't long before they fell in love.
He was totally in love with her. There is a story that on their honeymoon, which was about 10 years long, at one time they rolled off the roof that they were making love on while in union, and they fell down but landed in a bed of lotuses and lilies and didn't notice they had fallen.
And so, the stories say, he indulged himself for 29 years, until the shimmering bubble of pleasure burst.
His father does everything he can to never let him leave, never let him see the suffering that life is. But one day he goes outside and he's traveling through the kingdom and he has the first of 4 encounters. He sees an old man and he asks his attendant, and the attendant says, "Oh, that's change. One doesn't always stay young and perfect." Then on the next tour outside, he sees a sick man and doesn't quite understand what it is. He asks his attendant, and the attendant says, "Oh, that happens to all of us."
Everybody gets sick, and don't think you are a prince, you will not get sick. Your father will get sick, your mom will get sick, everybody will become sick.
Then he sees that it isn't just the sick person, in fact it's universal, and something is stimulated inside of him, so he keeps getting the chariot driver to take him out, and he sees, horror after horror.
And on his 3rd trip outside, he meets a corpse. And he recognizes impermanence and suffering and death as the real state of things. The world that he had been protected from, shielded from, kept from seeing.
And he was shocked. You know, he was shocked. And he realized, this is my fate too. I will also become old. I will also become ill. I will also die. How do I deal with these things? These are universal questions in any human being's life. What it's like to be in a body inside of time and our fate, and how do we navigate that? It really is a tale of the transformation from a certain naive, innocent relationship to your own life to wanting to know the full story, wanting to know the full truth.
And then the fourth trip outside, he sees a spiritual seeker, someone who has decided to live a life completely other than his life in order to escape from impermanence, suffering, and death. So he has this sort of traumatic encounter with the pain and suffering of life.
We try to protect our children. We don't want to let our children see all the pain that's in the world. But at a very early age, at a time before he could remember anything, at a time before there was conceptual thought, he already suffered the worst kind of loss that one could suffer. Suddenly and mysteriously, his mother died when he was a week old. So something tragic happened, right at the beginning. That might be what it takes to become a Buddha, is that you have to suffer on such a primitive level.
"29 years old, profoundly troubled, Siddhartha was determined to comprehend the nature of suffering. He resolved to leave the palace. His wife had just given birth to a baby boy. Siddhartha called him Rahula, fetter.
He names his son Fetter. He names his son Ball and Chain. This is the fetter that will keep me tethered to this life. This is what will keep me imprisoned.
Late one summer evening, Siddhartha went into his wife's room. A lamp of scented oil lit up. His wife lay sleeping on a bed strewn with flowers, cradling their newborn son in her arms. He gazed from the threshold, deep in thought. If I take my wife's hand from my son's head and pick him up and hold him in my arms, it will be painful for me to leave. He turned away and climbed down to the palace courtyard. His beloved horse, Kantaka, was waiting. As he rode toward the city's northern wall, he leapt high into the air. Mara, the tempter god of desire, was waiting. You are destined, Mara told him, to rule a great empire. Go back, and worldly power will be yours. Siddhartha refused.
He left grief and probably absolute puzzlement and dismay in the hearts of wife, in the infant son who was innocent and yet was suddenly fatherless, and of course his own father. But there is no knowledge won without sacrifice. And this is one of the hard truths of human existence. In order to gain anything, you must first lose everything.